Despite killing and assaulting several people, Jukka Lindholm was let out on parole. Receiving only short sentences, Jukka was free to continue killing, despite being sentenced to prison for his crimes. This case sheds a light onto Finland's very criticized legal system, where criminals are let back into society after serving only short sentences, being so protected that the civilians are not. This is the case of a serial killer who literally could have been stopped. This is the case of Jukka Lindholm. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Elin and on this channel I cover true crime cases that have occurred in the Nordic countries. Some content warnings before we start this video. This video will include talks about sexual violence, rape and murder of children, so if that's something that you don't want to watch, then I suggest you click out of this video now. I just also want to point out that this is the second time I'm filming this case. I filmed it already one time, but for some reason the sound was not working, so I'm filming it all over again. If you like my channel, please subscribe, and now let's get into the case that happened in Finland. So Jukka Lindholm was born in July 1965 in Oulu in Finland, making him 57 to 58 years old today. He goes by many names and is also known as Mikael Pentholm and currently Mikael Penttilä. But I'm gonna be using the name Jukka in this video since that was his original name. Jukka was the second child to his mother, and he also had a step-sibling from his dad's side, and he was close to both of his siblings. His parents divorced when he was still very young, and Jukka attended school in his hometown in Oulu. School went good at first, but in middle school he started to have problems, and as a teenager he started using alcohol and drugs and loved violent entertainment, for example, very violent movies. He also started doing petty crimes such as stealing from his grandma and stealing with his group of friends. Jukka's first violent crime started when he was only 16 years old. In November 1981, a 15-year-old girl was going home from a party, and Jukka kidnapped this girl and forced her into a basement where he beat her, choked her with scarves, and threatened to rape her. The girl has said that she was surprised that he did not rape her or even undress her during the attack, even if she tried to tell Jukka to just do it as long as he does not kill her. He wore black leather gloves during the attack, and this kind of becomes significant for Jukka later on in the case. The girl survived the attack and managed to escape, and later identified him through photographs. He was questioned and admitted to the act, but had no motive for what he did. Jukka received no fine or prison, probably due to his age, but because of his earlier thefts, he was put in a youth facility in 1984. Now, he did not like being in the youth facility, and he actually describes it as being in hell. He was released from the youth facility in 1985 when he was 20 years old. On the 26th of August 1985, so right after he was released from the youth facility, Jukka was out at a restaurant with his mother, Lina Lindholm, and her new boyfriend. Lina was a 48-year-old bartender. The group were drinking, and some kind of argument broke out between Lina and her boyfriend, and this actually turned physical, so Jukka kind of went in between the two of them. Later in the night, Jukka and his mother went back home to their apartment in Oulu. The following day, Jukka's father tried to get in touch with them, but received no answer, so he kind of got worried, and he went into the apartment using a spare key, where he found Lina dead in her bed. Police were called, and they first believed that she had died out of natural causes, but the autopsy showed that Lina had died out of strangulation. Both Jukka and his mother's boyfriend were suspects in the murder, but there was no evidence against them, so the crime was never solved and Jukka received no sentence for the crime. In July 1986, Jukka met two 12-year-old girls downtown and persuaded them to come to his apartment so that he could lend them a few marks for alcohol. When they arrived to his apartment in Oulu, he wanted to have sex with them, and they refused this, since they did not want. He then locked one of the girls into the bathroom, and she described hearing strange noises coming from outside. The other girl was knocked down on the floor and was actually choked to death with a belt. After that, Jukka released the other girl from the bathroom and sexually assaulted her. The girl escaped his grasp and ran from the apartment to the general stairway, and when Jukka realized that she had escaped, he actually fled to a nearby forest where he was later caught by police. He was drunk as he had alcohol in his system. And he was also acting very strange as he started crying in the police car and asking where his mom was, even if he knew that his mom was dead. So Jukka was questioned and claimed that he had killed a whore after drinking heavily that night. His intention had only been to have sex with them, but got really angry when they refused. In connection with the murder of this girl, Jukka also confessed to police that he had killed his mother 1 year before after she went to sleep by strangling her to death. According to this statement, he had worn blue leather gloves and his mother's red-colored scarf before killing her. He gave 3 reasons for why he killed her. He was angered by the fact that his mother had not been able to release him from the youth facility and that she had been dating a new man, preferring to live with him rather than his father, and the fact that his half-sister had moved away because of this man. Later in the Oulu court, he took back this confession and claimed that he had been using multiple psychoactive drugs at once. On the 17th of March 1987, the court ruled that Jukka Lindholm was guilty of murder and manslaughter as well as other crimes, sentencing him to 9 years and 7 months imprisonment. He appealed this case, and the court ruled that the death of his mother, Lina Lindholm, was not a murder and was instead an assault, and reduced the sentence to 8 years imprisonment. Jukka was granted parole in May 1992, only 5 years after his sentence. The first year after his release, he lived a pretty normal life, and in May 1993, so only 1 year after his release, he picked up a gun from his grandma's apartment that he was planning on selling. A 42-year-old woman that he knew went with him to his grandma's apartment, and somehow he ended up choking this woman with a belt in his grandma's apartment. His grandma came home and discovered this woman on her toilet floor, and Jukka was soon after this arrested. But Jukka at first denied this murder, claiming that somebody had just set him up. He did, however, claim that he went to the apartment with this woman and that she had stayed in the apartment after he left. Which, I mean, why would she just stay in his grandma's apartment alone after he leaves? So the evidence was pretty clear against him. A month after his arrest, he escaped from the Oulu country police station with another man, but was of course caught soon after. The Oulu District Court considered Jukka to be completely sane and responsible for his actions and sentenced him to 9.5 years imprisonment for manslaughter on the 13th of December 1993. After this, Jukka contacted the investigators and admitted to having killed the woman, but he claimed that it was by accident. According to him, he had told the woman that he had an abnormal sexual preference, including fetishes and tortures, and proposed to her that they could try this. And the woman had of course been shocked. Okay, so my camera just died, so if the lighting is a bit different, then that's why. I'm sorry about it, but I can't really do anything. Anyway, back to the case. So he had then been playing around her neck using a lace or a belt before realizing that she had died due to choking. Jukka, following this, wandered off to his mother's grave and just laid on her grave for a couple of hours. The Court of Appeal harshened the sentence to 10.5 years, sending Jukka to a special institution. In prison, Jukka started putting on makeup and dressing as a woman, and he has actually considered himself a lesbian woman since then. He was later prohibited from doing this as it might provoke other inmates. In prison, Jukka married Hannele Pentholm, who was sentenced to life imprisonment for her husband's murder. They were actually married for a couple of years. Jukka was examined in order to rule if he was a danger to others, and according to psychiatric reports, Jukka admired the violent manhood of his teenage years, despite starting to wear dresses and women's underwear while in prison. The evaluation also showed that he was not yet ready for civilian life. Despite this, Jukka Lindholm was released on parole in November of 2008. Half year after his release in May 2009, he started committing crimes again. He ordered a chiropractor to his home, and as she arrived at his house, he opened the door in leather gloves. He then forced her into his bed and started choking her. Now, she somehow managed to calm him down after this and actually drank coffee with him after the assault. So she survived this and left his house, but later describes the incident as a nightmare, which I totally understand. The same thing happened to a cleaning lady and a woman putting up a massage table in his home. On the 11th of June 2010, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, this time for the 3 attempted assaults, rape, as well as other crimes. He was regarded as a dangerous offender and was because of this not released earlier. In 2015, he escaped from prison during a prisoner shopping trip but was caught the following day. After serving 6 years in prison, he was free again around Christmas time 2016. In 2017, he was convicted again for aggravated crime and preparation of a criminal offense. This was after knocking on his 17-year-old neighbor's door and giving her a love letter. The letter started with, "Hi Susie, if you want to meet and get to know me, let me know," among other things, as well as his phone number. Police took this as a preparation for a crime. He was later sentenced to 2 years and 6 months imprisonment and was ordered to pay the victim a compensation of 4,000 euros. It was, however, during the time that he was waiting for this sentence, so the time in between being convicted and actually getting the sentence, that he committed his next crime. Jukka was allowed to walk free on the streets while waiting for his sentence, so in April of 2018, Jukka used a prepaid phone number to meet up with a 52-year-old woman sex worker. When he arrived at the woman's apartment in Helsinki, she recognized him and of course panicked. Since she started screaming, he wanted to make her stop, so following this, he strangled her to death in various ways and hid her body under the bed. The victim was found almost a month later after her body started to smell, and Jukka was arrested on suspicion of murder. I actually read online that the owner of the apartment went to the apartment 2 times looking for her before actually finding her under the bed. The police had connected Jukka to the murders after finding his real phone number in the victim's call history, as he had tried to buy her one time before this. They also had security footage of him buying the prepaid phone as well as DNA. They also found extreme BDSM videos on his computer, for example, a woman strangling another woman to death. So on 17th of May 2018, the police announced that Jukka had admitted during interrogations that he had committed a homicide. He himself said in court that his first thought after the murder was, "Oh shit, now another one died." In July of 2018, the Helsinki District Court sentenced him to life imprisonment for murder, which in Finland is the minimum of 12 years. The murder had been very raw, using several tools such as leather belts, tights, or his bare hands. It had also taken a long time for the victim to die, as Jukka has prolonged her death. Jukka later announced that he would appeal the court's decision, but the sentence was upheld, meaning that he's still in prison to this day. According to experts, Jukka has an abnormal sexual behavior where he feels pleasure out of strangling people and is unable to control it, which makes him very dangerous. This also makes him obsessed with sadistic porn. Jukka Lindholm is today considered a Finnish serial killer who is often called the serial strangler in the media. The FBI has analyzed Jukka and ruled him to be a serial killer, making him the only Finn that fits the FBI's description of a serial killer. He kills for pleasure and enjoys killing, and psychiatric evaluation has shown that he is a psychopath. He sees himself as a victim and pretty much blames his surroundings for not helping him as he should have been helped. Despite his danger, Lindholm was repeatedly released from prison, even with the risk of a new death, and this has led to a lot of criticism from people, especially when it comes to the Finnish legal system. And honestly, from my perspective, being a person living in Finland, it's very scary to think that a person like this, who has committed this kind of crimes, can actually be out on the streets walking next to you. Like, it's just crazy to me that these kind of people can actually be let out of prison in this country. My thoughts and prayers, as usual, go out to the victims' families, and I hope that they today have some kind of peace knowing that he's in prison for what he has done. But that's all I have for this case, and I hope I see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.